Good evening, good evening, good evening, Tifu. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being on time. We are just a minute after 7 p.m. I am happy to be here with you. I hope I'm audible and my lighting is all good because I do not have the power supply from our main supplier. So this is one of those that we live with. But nevertheless, thank you for being here. I'm not sure whether our host is giving me permission to give more people enough time to come in. If we can have maybe 60 seconds to give everyone an opportunity just to join in. And after that, we be on time and start the program. It is jam-packed and I'm looking forward to it. Very informative. And there's a lot that we're going to learn, but also there's a lot that we can do to share and grow together. So I'll be starting the timer from now for the next 60 seconds, just to allow perhaps other people that are still joining in and coming in from work or from the shops or just have completed their work at the moment, just for them to come in as we get in. But thank you very much for everyone for coming in and welcome again. So 40 seconds to go. We're here. Welcome once more to this fantastic program. And it has been a long time that we haven't been together in this space. And I'm happy to be with you again this evening. So, welcome to yet another session that is informative, where not only do we expand our network, but we make friends and get to learn to work together. So tonight, as we've been planning and working towards it, I'm excited to tell you what is coming up, who's coming in. We've been very excited with Dimsani this week, just knowing that she has agreed to come and speak with us. I've had the opportunity to actually listen to her, learn from her, and understand what her program is about. And tonight, she's in our midst. We can ask all the questions that we need to learn from her. And tonight she is actually going to be telling us about how we can lift as we rise and what the role of traditional African values could be in a globalized digital world. Well, a short bio to tell you who is coming through and what she's about. She is the CEO of We Think Code, a South African tech academy that operates in Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town. She's an entrepreneur and tech executive. She's very passionate about seeing Africa take its place as a maker of cutting edge technology. In her role as CEO in this company, We Think Code, she has driven effective initiatives to scale the impact of the organization, which includes the recruitment capacity, launching of homegrown curriculum that caters for South African market, and accelerating the recruitment of women students to the point of party within the academy. She is a seasoned executive with a track record of elevating tech and business enterprise to new levels of success. Yes, we're happy that she established herself as a force in the tech and business sector. We do recognize her and we are aware of her. We're happy to have her here again tonight. And at ThoughtWork Africa, she expanded the software consultancies, African operation and client-based. Her earlier role in the audit and assurance division at Deloitte in New York and Harare, earned her knowledge and expertise as a leader in financial audits and talent development. Across these experiences, she has shown a deep understanding of strategic growth, operational excellence, and international business dynamics. She is a prominent voice at leading tech conferences worldwide. She's a driving force behind linking tech professionals and businesses to foster a skilled workforce for South Africa's future. May we kindly allow our guest tonight to actually brace us and give us that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nyari Samushonga. Nyari, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lerato. I'm delighted to be here and excited to be able to engage with this incredibly extraordinary group. I think it's one of those stories where the experiences that have brought you all onto this call very much align with the work that we're doing at We Think Code. So it's such an honor to be in such great company. It's always great to be preaching to a choir and not trying to convert hearts. And so that's, I think, as a team, why we're happy to be here, because we're united in arms and we're able to discuss how we can maximize our joint impact. And we're Africans, so we know it takes a village. It always takes a village. And so I'm delighted that Dumisani has invited not just me, but the We Think Code team to be a part of this village. And we're excited to engage with you today. I know we're starting with a prayer, so I'll pause there and we'll go to that, and then we'll come back to the chatter about what's going on at We Think Code and what Kile, Jay, and I are here to share with everyone.
Thank you. May we kindly start with a prayer? And I'm sure if it's Dumisani or the person that is responsible to help us today, because I know it's everyone, but just one person.
Okay, a very good evening to everybody. I'm not seeing Fiona on the call yet. I'm sure she's still coming. But may we open in a word of prayer quickly. Can we bow our heads and pray? Father, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for all that you have done in our lives. We thank you, Lord, that you are the one that we give glory to for all that you are doing in this ecosystem from now and beyond, in the name of Jesus. We thank you for the people who are visiting our ecosystem here today, people who have come to share with us what you have taught them over a lifetime. And we are so privileged to be here. Father, we speak your protection, we speak your goodness upon their lives, we speak your protection and your goodness upon everybody who is on this call. We ask you to open our ears so that we would hear beyond what the speaker and the speakers will be saying, that we may hear your heart, that we may be able to do what you have called us to. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much for that, Dumisani. And well, I couldn't hide my excitement. I think it's been very obvious that I am excited. I will waste no moment and allow you to lead your team in our presentation. Madam Nyari, please take over.
Thank you so much, Lerato. Kile, I don't know if you have permissions to share your screen. And it's 7 p.m. It's probably been a long week. It's definitely been a long year for everyone. So anyone who has enough bandwidth to at least show their face, so it's a little bit easier for me and I don't feel like I'm speaking into the air, I'd appreciate just a few faces with videos on. No pressure. If you don't have a video face, I understand. I'm not judging. But let's try to cheer each other up after the news of the cricket. We just got knocked out in the semi-finals. They had a rough start. They fought back, but it wasn't to be. But let me dive right into it. I think we're basically going to try and cover in about 20 minutes, 4 parts, and then thereafter really, really keen to have an engagement and a conversation, because I think this work is mostly about discussion and finding each other and encouraging each other in the work. So I'll start with a little bit about myself. And then I'm going to move from my own story into the We Think Code story and what we're working on. Then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Kile, who is the brains behind We Think Code's mentorship program, and a major support, at least for me as a leader at We Think Code. And then you're actually going to hear from 2 We Think Code alumni that have benefited from the mentorship program. So that it's not just Nyari and Kile selling Kool-Aid, but rather a genuine live encounter. And you can actually ask people that have benefited from these interactions what they meant to them. So those are the 4 areas. So I'll start with my own story and why this work matters to me so much. So as per the introduction, my name is Nyari Samushonga, and I am the CEO of We Think Code. I have been since the beginning of 2019. You know, time flies when you're having fun. But yeah, in that time, I have led We Think Code to where it is now. But I always feel like it's really important for me to share why We Think Code. So I'm Zimbabwean. I was born and raised in Zimbabwe, and I trained as a chartered accountant. And upon graduating out of Zim as a chartered accountant, moved and lived in the United States, where I worked for Deloitte. So I trained with Deloitte in Zim, and then I worked for Deloitte in the United States, mostly in New York, a little bit of New Jersey for 5 years, and got homesick, missed the weather, missed the food, but most importantly, missed my nuclear family and the broader African family. So after 5 years in the States, I left and worked in Tanzania for 6 months. I had a bit of a medical crisis while I was in Tanzania 6 months in, and realized that it was time for me to move closer to where family was. And at that time, my aunt, my cousins, my brother, my sister were living in Johannesburg. And so since 2012, Johannesburg has been home. And at the time that I moved, I was shifting careers from accounting into technology. And so I went from being a public accountant, an auditor, financial advisor, into being a software development trainee junior. So huge pay cut, huge dip in my rank. But the key thing there was I felt like I was ready for a new adventure. Why I share the story of that journey is because before I even get on that journey, my grandmother was a maid, and she fled the village and moved to Harare, colonized Zimbabwe. So Salisbury at the time in Rhodesia. Why? Because she had been promised to marriage to her older sister's husband, because her older sister couldn't have children. And she didn't want that life. So she fled one cage, which was her family marrying her off to a man she didn't want to be a wife to, into maybe a slightly bigger cage, which is a colonized and segregated, then Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and worked as a maid. And the way I cycle now, I do 94.7. Back then, she was on one of those black bikes and riding between the township to go into the suburbs where she worked and had to be out by a particular time. So there were pass laws in Zimbabwe and everything. And so she had her children. And my grandmother basically slept in an informal settlement for months to be allocated council housing, and had her children, 4 of them, the 3rd of which is my mother. And she was very determined that her girls go to school. My mother, at 18, has finished O-levels, which is just a year before the end of matric, and was pregnant with my older brother. And so at 18, she was a young bride and a young mother, and that marriage would become a quite violent marriage. She was in that marriage for about 17 years, but it was a rough marriage for her. And so where my grandmother was a maid, and her feminist dynamic act was to run away from a village so she wouldn't be a bride to a man she didn't want to marry, gets her girls through school. And my mom had started working in the bank. She was one of the first bank tellers in a bank in Harare, in Barclays, just after Zimbabwe became independent in 1980. But she had my brother a year before all this happens. And she had to persevere and fight through that, and then have her kids, her 3 kids, and remains a stickler for education. She's in her 60s now, and she's doing her PhD. And she got her degree at the age of about 35. When I was getting my undergrad, my honors degree, my mom was getting her undergraduate degree because she studied while she was working. But a key story of why I am where I am is because of education. My mom was educated more than my grandmother was, and she saw to it that I was educated more than she was. But more than that, my mom raised us in a Zimbabwe where the public education system was so good. And so from the preschool that I went to the primary school I went to the high school I went to, was all public school education. But what's more, when I finished high school, back then in Zimbabwe, when I joined Deloitte, you could do your articles straight out of high school. And so I did my articles with Deloitte straight out of high school, and I studied by correspondence while I was doing my articles. And it was a 5-year track as opposed to the regular 3-year CA track. And I studied with UNISA. So I did my undergraduate degree and my honors degree with UNISA, which is also a public institution. And the quality of the education that I got was brilliant. When I got to the United States, I could more than hold my own. I was excellent. And I was excellent because I grew up in an environment where I had access to a quality of education that my family had no money to buy. My brother did the same, and he is a chartered accountant trained at Ernst & Young. And my brother and myself paid for my younger sister to go to university at UCT, and she's an actuary. So my family's story is unfortunately unique in the sense that not a lot of people that come from the background we come from, grandmother, a maid, mother, a teen bride with a teen pregnancy, raises 3 professionals. But she was able to do it because the public system made it possible for us to have access to education, quality education, world-class education. And as a strict, firm mother, she saw to it that we didn't waste that opportunity. My mother worked in public relations. And because she worked in public relations and is quite the extrovert, she had such a broad network of people. And so suddenly, as a young woman, high school, studying and working, I always had access to brilliant people, and especially brilliant Black women that showed me that there was an expectation of me to do well. None of my history mattered. None of our financial immediate circumstance mattered. None of my mother's troubled marriage and being a single mom, struggling to make ends meet, was ever presented in front of me as a ceiling. And that's the bigger exception. But because of that, my life becomes what it is, where I've traveled around the world, I've built businesses, and now I can support other people in building their own lives and career journeys. And so this has always been important to me, even when I was in corporate. I would, as an executive, try to make sure that money went to, causes that were important to me, women in tech, supporting women in growing. When I was in the United States, Black accountants, I was part of that, committee. I was trying to make sure that we were getting more Black accountants coming up in the ranks. And so when We Think Code starts, it's a natural fit for me because it's an opportunity to recreate the experience that I had. Access to an affordable education in the form of We Think Code is free. Quality education that makes you internationally relevant, which is what I got through my accounting qualification. And a supporting community of people that look like you, that are rooting for you, that assure you that you can do it. It is possible. And it's not our fault, it's history's fault that we stand out and seem like an exception. And so with that, I joined We Think Code so that I can be a part of the solution, a part of tapping into what is a huge opportunity in a growing tech sector to bring Africans, Black Africans, smart, diligent, driven Africans that are shut out of the economy, not because they're not brilliant, but because there are circumstances that even their parents were purely victim of, shut them out. And I think now we have a responsibility. I often say to the young women at We Think Code that, when you arrive and you're the first woman and you're the only woman, you're kind of a victim of segregation. By the time it's 5 years in and you're still the first woman and the only woman in the room, we start to look at you sideways. Like, what are you doing about this? Or have you become a part of the establishment? And so when I was saying in my intro that I'm excited to be preaching to a choir, what I'm excited about is speaking to people that understand that, yes, while as individuals we may be smart and we may be driven and we may be exceptional, the reason why we are so rare is the system, and the system needs to change. And so there's an old African proverb that says, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is now. So I'm here because my grandmother fought her fight and handed my mother a baton. Where there might have been limits in money to what she handed my grandmother, there was a spirit and a philosophy of hard work and pushing an envelope and a boundary. And that's so to my mother. And by seeing to my mother was able to see to her children. And by being seen to, I'm now sitting in my chair and saying, I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to extend the village that built me and make the village bigger so that it can build more, and the more can build even more. And my biggest dream is to be retired and old in a rocking chair, and We Think Code is doing things that are beyond anything I ever imagined. And the people that are enrolled don't even remember my name, but I know that at some point I played a small part into building this and moving it forward. And so that's my story, and that's how I got here. And Kile, I know you're driving the slides for me, but now I'm going to talk about We Think Code, which is how are we as a team at We Think Code lifting as we rise out of the ashes that are a history of colonization, of segregation, of underserved schools, of lack of opportunity. How are we lifting other people to the level that we have been able to rise to? Because we know they're as good as us, we know they are better than us, and we know they deserve opportunity in the same way that we received opportunities. And so we are building a future-proof talent pipeline in the tech sector that we believe will transfer Africa from being a net consumer of tech and education to a place where people look to Africa for tech solutions. And that's the critical thing, is currently when we talk about tech penetration in Africa, we talk about people having smartphones, we talk about access to data, we talk about how many people are consuming digital information, are transacting financially. We don't talk about how many Africans are building tech, and we don't talk about how many people globally are consuming the tech built by Africans. So my invitation to this group is not just to mentor young people at We Think Code, but is to shift a paradigm to one where we say, we're not just building young people, we are building young people that will build the technology that will power the whole world from right here in Africa. And that's the mission. And it's no small task, which is why all our hands need to be on deck. And so let's talk a little bit about the context, right? When you look at the landscape that we have right now, there's a scramble for talent. South Africa's traditional pipeline for knowledge workers, which is the category in which software developers fall, produces 2,900 software developers a year. So that's Wits University, Stellenbosch, UJ, all the universities together, according to DHET, are producing 2,900 software developers a year. And yet, studies done by Harambe, working with Wits University, say there are 40,000 unfilled jobs in South Africa every year. Not new jobs we need to create, unfilled jobs that already exist. I was in a meeting today with the team at COJ, and they were pointing out that in their studies, they're finding it to be about 30 to 35,000. So in that range, there are thousands of jobs going unfilled each year. And guess what? South African businesses are exporting 10 billion rands worth of money to procure services of tech professionals internationally because they can't find that talent at home. Why? 40,000 unfilled jobs, 2,900 out of the university pipeline, and 10 billion is going to India, to Europe, because local businesses that are trying to build their apps for tourism, apps for financial services, apps for telcos cannot find those skills locally. And I mean, this group which works in technology already understands this. And yet South Africa has 5.6 million unemployed youth. So if you look at tech not just as a place with existing opportunity, 40,000 unfilled jobs locally, 10 billion, I don't know how many heads that translates to that 10 billion would pay to deliver services locally. But we all know that tech is a creative industry that creates businesses that create jobs. So here we are just counting what we know is available. We're not counting the opportunity cost of failing to produce software developers that would produce economic activity. And so shortage of talent, abundance of opportunity, lost opportunity financially that goes out. So let's measure this now. What would happen if these 40,000 young people that are unemployed currently were trained to be software developers and could actually earn an income? Next slide, please. Here are the staggering numbers. OfferZen, which is the biggest place of software developers in South Africa, estimates that on average, an entry-level software developer, which is what those 40,000 unfilled jobs are, they're entry-level jobs, 300,000 rands a month is what they would earn. If we got those youth to work, they would collectively earn 12 billion rands a year, because they would be earning 300,000 rands a year each, 40,000 of them, 12 billion rands a year, is the income that could be in the pockets of our youth each year. That's just untapped. 1.7 billion rands of SARS money that I'm sure Kiswater would be happy to have and spend. And this is a situation that we find ourselves in. We have too few coming out of university, too many jobs that can't be taken up by those few, money actually leaving the country, and we're essentially missing 12 billion. And here I'm just measuring in money. I'm not measuring in the social impact of what happens when a young person, instead of being hopeless, instead of being desperate and depressed, instead of being hooked on drugs, is able to get an opportunity to be productive. I'm not measuring the social value. I'm purely measuring the rand value of what this can do. And so let's look at then how we can turn this thing around, because we can either look at this as a problem or we can look at it as an opportunity. 100 young people enter the school system in grade 1. 60 will write the matric exam. 37 will come out of matric with a qualification, an NQF level 4. 12 will enroll in university, and about 6 South African adults will end up with a university degree. That's the pipeline. So it's a leaky pipeline. And the question We Think Code is asking is, so among those 94, where are they ending up? And what are we saying about their ability to contribute to the South African economy? Next slide, please. And so we decided we were going to do something about it. We've designed an inclusive recruiting methodology. And what that means is that instead of saying we want to see your matric certificate, because we know only 37 out of the 100 have it, we know that not just 37 out of the 100 have the matric certificate. We know that of the 63 that don't, most of them don't have it, not because they're not smart, not because they're not driven, but because the system let them down. And in a country plagued with poverty, unemployment, and inequality, most of the young people that are not getting that good quality matric certificate are smart, are driven, are hardworking, but they're in an underserviced and under-resourced school. So we don't ask you for your matric certificate. We test your aptitude to code. You do an online test, critical thinking, to see if you can follow a puzzle. We're checking for English comprehension. We're checking for basic numeracy. And then we're checking for that analytical mind, critical thinking, problem solving. And so with this, we are able to recruit smart young people that on paper can't certify their aptitude, but actually in practice can show not just smarts, but drive. So we receive about 40,000 applications a year. 2,500 we take from the critical thinking test. And then those 2,500 come into a selection bootcamp on our campuses, where for 6 days, we teach them to code. And then we test how well they understand what we taught them. We use Python as a programming language, and having used Python, they learn to use it to build a basic calculator, to do a hangman game, etc. And the ones that are able to show that competence and capability and the drive, because the majority of them have never coded before, most of them have at most matric. And so if you can show that cognitive ability to pull through, and you can show that discipline to see it through, then we recruit you. Each year, we only recruit 400. This year, we're up to 490 because we are partnering with 2 TVET colleges, one in Boksburg and the other one, Central Joburg College. So the story of the 4,000 to 2.5 to 490 in 2023 is a story of not enough funds that We Think Code to train more, not a shortage of talent. And we know with 40,000 jobs to fill, 490 a year is not going to cut it. But that's a story for another day. Over 16 months, the 490 that make it in go through a rigorous demand-led training program built by South African software developers that are practitioners, that are putting code into production, that have been in our universities and colleges teaching. They've designed a practical, market-relevant curriculum. And in the earlier days, I was a lot more involved. I was bold enough to say we need a new curriculum. The French one we were using assumed entry-level knowledge of computing and coding that didn't match the South African context. So we ripped it out and built our own. And earlier on, I was able to use my own experience of switching from accounting to tech at the age of 30 to say these are the kinds of things that are useful to learn in the beginning. So 16 months of rigorous training. They learn to code, they learn to communicate, they learn to work in teams, they learn to manage their emotional well-being so that they can show up and be productive, to manage their money, to come to work on Monday after payday on Friday, to make tough decisions about keeping the money to get to school, to pass the qualification so that you can earn more money to look after your family. And then at the end of that, 80% of the people that join We Think Code graduate, and 91% of the people that graduate are in permanent employment as software developers within 4 months of graduation. And in 2023, we started piloting with TVET campuses how to pathway people, how to train more people. And why are we doing this? South Africa has got 50 TVET colleges. Each college has multiple campuses. In total, 343 campuses. They're in the cities, they're in the townships, peri-urban, rural, they're everywhere. If we can start to take a model that recruits people with no prior coding experience, many of them with learning gaps, trains them over 16 months to be software developers, graduates 80% of them, and pathways them to employment within 4 months. If we can do this at a national scale through TVET colleges, we can actually meet that 40,000 target, raise 12 billion rands a year in income, and raise 1.7 billion rands of tax revenues to go back into South Africa and build it further. Next slide, please. I know that slide said this one says 738 graduates to date. I think we're now up to about 1,000 based on the last group that graduated this August. But this is more of that information. So one of the things that I'm passionate about as a woman in tech is how, when I came from accounting, the Black women chartered accountants had done the work. They had gotten the women in, they had gotten the Black women in. When I got into tech, it was a lonely world for a girl. It was a particularly lonely world for a Black girl. And so when We Think Code in the beginning was recruiting 6% women in 2016. From 2019, we launched Women Think Code, focused on attracting more women, debunking theories about how tech is not for women, encouraging people that influence young women in their career decisions to encourage them to come to technology, showcasing women in technology that are doing amazing things to normalize the idea of women as techies. And I'm delighted to say that since 2021, we've been at gender parity in our academy, 49% in 2021, 52% in 2022, 52% in 2023 are women. And this excites and delights me because when I joined We Think Code, the women's bathroom was a ghost town. Now I stand in a line and I consider that a privilege because it means my sisters are in the house. And we're delivering market relevant training. 91% of our graduates are recruited by hiring partners, and our partners come back. Our partners come back for more because of the quality of the talent that we're delivering. Next slide, please. And so that's just the timeline I've described. 2016, We Think Code is founded. First 115 beneficiaries. We were only in Joburg. We were accredited by MICT-CETA in 2017 as an NQF level 5. We're now on our way to be with QCTO and NQF level 6, which is diploma. And in the next year or so, we want to be offering a bachelor's degree pass. We opened Cape Town in 2018. We opened Durban in 2021. We introduced a work readiness and wraparound psychosocial support in 2019 so that we're not just producing techies, but we're producing people who are well-rounded and have the agency to build a career. In 2020 is when we changed the curriculum from the French one to our home brew, which is now getting us higher rates of graduation because it's meeting our students where they start and then accelerating their journey to where they can be economically productive as digitally skilled individuals. 2024, we want to massify this. And this is where we're looking to the people on this call to say, let's lock in arms and let's get more of our young people trained and supported in learning. And next slide, please. So these are our partners, FNB, BBD, those are our founding partners, but we're strong in the telcos, we're strong in financial services, we're working with disruptors like Yoko, Triggerfish, SureSwipe, Zumo, now Ozo. We're supplying to the tech consultancies, Dimension Data, BBD, Accenture. More recently, we've added on MTN to our telcos, Vodacom and Telkom. And we're determined to keep going further because we know the demand for the skills is there. We know the Black child is smart enough. We know that given an opportunity and the training, they can blow out the lights. So we've built a reputation as a reliable source of top tech talent. Many organizations now prefer our talent pipeline to the university one because our graduates have practical hands-on experience and they have the wraparound support of being work ready. They know how to communicate, they know how to show up, how to be accountable, because there's all of this focus in ensuring that they make it through. And so we're determined to impact more sectors and continue to drive this growth. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand over to Kele to talk about the mentorship program, but I just want to go back to that reality of, I know the people on the school might be nervous and feel unprepared to support the young people that come out of a We Think Code. The thing that I want to emphasize is that many of these young people are like my mother. They are the daughters of maids and they're the sons of maids of a petrol attendant. Their parents are leaving home at crazy hours in the dark and coming back late at night. So they are not there to support them in the journey. Their parents don't have corporate experience. Their children have not grown up seeing them wake up, suit up, and go to the office. When they're sitting around the dinner table, no one is asking them, how was your school day? What do you want to do? Help me understand this tech thing. No one is coming from work and coming to the dinner table and say, I had this interesting idea. I saw this young person build this app. I saw this young person talk about technology. You must consider going into that career. Our young people are desperate. They are desperate for a few minutes with someone who's walked the gauntlet, gone down that road, who can just put an arm around them and say, it's gonna be okay. So already, just by the journey that you've walked, by the experiences that you've had, by the doors you've kicked down and the odds you have defied, you are already overqualified to support someone else and let them know that someone that looks like them, that comes from a place like the place where they came from, that on a Saturday afternoon when they go to lunch with family, goes to a place like the place they live in, understands, made it through, and is here to help them navigate the world of transitioning from learning to earning, you are more than qualified. Kile is going to talk about some of the resources she makes available to support you, but I want to assure you that you showing up feeling unprepared but willing is already more than the young people in We Think Code have on a daily basis. So I encourage you to do what we've done and be vulnerable enough to say, the cause is bigger than my insecurity, so I'm going to show up. Because when I show up, then they're going to be okay. And when they're okay, South Africa is going to be okay. And when South Africa is okay, we can stop building big walls in our suburban homes because we are keeping out youth we've let down. And we can have open fences and open doors because we are lifting as we rise. And so that is what I am encouraging this audience to do. And this is what I am assuring that this audience is qualified to participate, more than qualified, in fact, uniquely qualified to send the message to young people like we were a few years ago, that you too can sit in the chair that I sit in. So I'm going to stop there and I'm going to hand over to Kele, who's the brains behind the operation, and not Nyari, the talking head. This is the person who actually does the work and makes our mentorship program possible. Kele, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nyari. I'm unable to start my camera, but I'm happy to just give you guys a brief overview of our industry mentorship program. So as Mary mentioned, in 2019, we started implementing a lot of wraparound social support for our students. So We Think Code not only focuses on the technical upskilling of our students, but we also try to instill a lot of those soft skills into our students, and the mentorship program is one of the ways that we do that. So it is quite an active part of our second year curriculum and a vital core of the We Think Code pedagogy, because as I mentioned, we don't only focus on that technical upskilling. So the objective of our mentorship program is to provide expert technical as well as career support to our second year students as they begin their transition from being students to work-ready software developers. So a lot of our students do come from underserved communities, so they don't necessarily have a lot of people that they look up to. So just being mentored by someone that they know, has been in my shoes before, doesn't know what to do, and things like that is a lot of motivation for our students. So our mentors are required to provide guidance on communication and ways of working, things like insights on tackling programming challenges within the curriculum, as well as just providing them with a space to reflect and build that self-awareness. So a lot of the mentors who do sign up for our program are, the CFOs, CIOs, software developers, business analysts, people who can provide them with that workplace experience, because our program is a work simulated environment. So the mentorship program is just an opportunity to kind of emphasize those skills that are required within the workplace. So how our program is basically structured is that each volunteer will mentor a group of 4 to 6 students. So we actually pair our volunteers based on the areas of interest, the industries that they work in, and that is how we pair the mentor with the mentees. A mentor is required to spend a minimum of 1 hour every 2 weeks with their group, and the sessions are based on the mentor's availability. So before we actually even kick off with the program, I do like an informational session where I actually explain how the mentorship program works. And this is where I also provide the tools and an actual mentorship handbook that kind of explains to you how the program will work. We provide you with various topics that you will cover in each mentorship session with the students. The program does run for 6 months. So it starts when our second years start their second semester, because this is where we start emphasizing a lot more in terms of their work readiness training. So this is where the mentorship program tends to become a bit more important and quite vital, because our students then can get that expert feedback from the mentors. So we do provide quite a lot of support from Within Code. So as I mentioned, when I do the kickoff session, I do provide you with the tools as well as the resources in terms of making sure that for every single session, you know what to cover. So there are a lot of suggested topics for each session. And then we also do provide you with access to the curriculum timetable so that you know what our students are working on throughout the program, and then also just helping them in terms of any issues that they might be experiencing that might be a bit more technical. Then you can be able to provide that support. And then we also host a lot of opt-in monthly mentorship coaching circles. So this is just an opportunity for the mentees, the mentors, to just share any thoughts about the experiences within the mentorship program. It's quite a safe space to share suggestions in terms of best mentoring practices, because some people have been mentors before, some haven't. So this is just a space to share that knowledge and to share what works for your group, what hasn't worked for your group, and things like that. And also, I do a lot of check-ins with our students in terms of then me being able to provide you with that feedback on how students are progressing throughout the program, and also in terms of their performance as well. I'll provide you with regular updates on that to ensure that you do have that information and that support in terms of the mentorship program. So I've basically just covered an outline of how the program itself works, but I think it would make more sense if Jay and Tuto, who have been part of the mentorship program and are beneficiaries of Within Code as well as this program, to speak more about their experience and how it was quite helpful for them, and why it was so important for them to be part of the mentorship program. So I'm going to hand it over to either Tuto or Johannes to share their experience. Tuto, do you want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. All right, before I start, Nyari said something there. She said, she thinks, some of the students may not really, well, let me share my view. Some of the students may not really remember her name, but that's, I don't think, well, at least for me, it's not really true, because Within Code has totally changed my life and for the better. So, I'll always remember the institution. I'll love the institution with all of my heart. And yeah, so I just wanted to start with that. So onto the mentorship program. So before joining Within Code, I was on a traditional academic path. I thought I would be an academic, and then I did not have funds to finish my degree. And thankfully, because of Within Code, I was able to get a world-class education, and I'm now permanently employed as a DevOps engineer. So how the mentorship program helped me out was, I had a mentor it was a senior developer from BBD, one of the founding companies. We'd have sessions every week. So we'd basically just give us advice, talk to us through problems, try and give us a cohesive view of how what we're learning in the curriculum kind of fits into the work experience. I remember when we had to choose our electives in final year, because there were 3 electives, and then he would help us with that in terms of going for the one that's aligned with your interests and your strength. So the mentorship program was very, very amazing, was very, very helpful in terms of getting through the program, having someone to talk to who has experience, having someone to tell you that, okay, I've also struggled. Even now as a senior developer, I also don't have all the answers in terms of code. I also do struggle from time to time, because it gets really hard. I mean, the program is very, very intensive, but very, 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 very good and very, very beneficial as well. So you gain practical skills, and in such a fast-paced environment, having a mentor and someone who can show you the shortcuts, and not necessarily shortcuts, but give you tips on how to achieve some of your goals faster. That was very, very helpful. So yeah, we'd have sessions every week. We'd sometimes decide on a topic during the session, or during the week we'd just have conversations about what we wanted to talk about. So it would range from anything from culture to best practices of software developers to as I mentioned, when we had to choose our electives, he would tell us the difference between in the industry, what would a mobile developer do, what would a DevOps engineer do, what would a tester do, someone doing system integration, etc. So yeah, that was very, very helpful. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you want me to share.
Thanks, Tito. I think also Janice can also share his experience. I'm not sure if he's still on the call.
Nah, I am Oscar. I wouldn't go anywhere. Okay. For me, basically, sure. What can I say about Within Code? All right. Let me not talk about Within Code, but specifically the mentorship program, because that's going to be like a whole hour session. So, on my side, I was mentored by a gentleman called Daniel Teme. He's a developer, a senior developer at Intellect. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the name, but then I'm already done. So the before we started with the mentorship program, we spoke around what we would like to achieve or what we would like to get out of it. And the consensus in the mentorship group was we wanted more the soft skills and not the hard skills, because we felt that Within Code was giving us that already. So one of the talking points that we agreed with was talking about how to deal with pressure in the workplace, dealing with things like iterative work. Every 2 weeks you have to submit something new. Every 2 weeks you need to implement whatever the employer is trying to, or is getting you to implement in that project that you're working on. So how do you deal with that pressure? And he gave us exactly that. So I saw on the slide that Oscar was sharing that the mentors would have to meet with the mentees for at least an hour every 2 weeks. Our mentor was so generous that he gave us an hour per week. So we had about 4 hours every month with him, and it was the best time that I was always looking forward to those meetings. So we spoke about dealing with pressure. We spoke about how to stay up to date with the technologies, how to remain relevant, because in this sector that we're in, there's always something new. There's always a new language that is being introduced. There's always new frameworks that are being introduced. So how do you then get to remain up to date, and how do you get then to remain relevant, in what you do? We spoke about how to find your niche in the market. Tuto spoke about the electives. Yes, we had a very intensive conversation with Daniel about how does one get to choose which one to specialize in, because even when you say you want to be a mobile developer, the mobile development field is a wide field in its own. So where do you go inside the mobile development sector? So we spoke about, we had such conversations. We spoke about having insight into the first few years of work, because that's where we felt like a lot of, or that's where he advised that a lot of developers are making a lot of mistakes, because you then tend to be in, you tend to commit career suicide by choosing the wrong sector, by choosing the wrong language, by choosing the wrong specialization. So you need to make the best out of the first few years of your work, because that then determines whether or not you will be a senior in that sector in the next 3 to 5 years to come. We spoke about getting a taste into the day-to-day of being a software developer. Some of us, we daydream And we are so visual in what we intend to do with what or within our careers. So to a point that we wanted to see, we wanted him to paint a picture for us to say, what exactly can I expect in the office? What is the office environment like? What can I expect from my potential employer? What can I expect from my manager? What can I expect? How can I behave in a sense that, or in a way that will enable me to grow in this field? So the mentorship program, for me, it was very useful because I then got to have a mental picture of what to expect. Because Within Code, like I said, was giving me the technical skills, but then what about the soft skills? Yes, Within Code is giving the students the soft skills, but then sometimes we need to hear that from someone who is inside the sector, who does the work, so that they can tell us what to expect and what to do and what not to do, because that's very important as well. So yeah, that was my experience with Mr. Daniel Temi. I'll remember his name just as much as I remember Kelly's name, because she placed me, and I'll always remember your name, Nyari. I'll never forget those names.
Jay, I'm just gonna put myself on blast. I didn't know Daniel was your mentor. So Daniel is a German developer who's my ex-boyfriend, and first I was surprised to find out that he was mentoring, and so I didn't know he was a mentor. But the other thing that I wanted to touch on, Jay, I know you're not talking about your full story, but Jay actually works for We Think Code now. So all of our campuses are headed up by an academic performance manager who supports the student training. And Jay is at We Think Code. So we've got people like Tuto who are our ambassadors outside. And 80% of We Think Code's tech team is alumni. So we actually also are one of the biggest recruiters of We Think Code talent. And so Jay is at the Central Joburg College TVET campus. And one of the things that we found is that people who've gone through the process become incredible facilitators for the learning of others. And it also ensures that We Think Code has access to a really good quality pipeline of talent. And as we scale, we're building the timber. So just wanted to say that about Jay. And Tuto, thank you for saying you'll remember me. Means the world. I think we'll hand back to the chair and open up for questions, because we're really keen to give insights and information that's relevant.
Thank you so much. I am now more than excited. I thought I was excited when we started, but now I think, look, you guys just blew my top up. And thank you for also bringing the mentees into the program to give feedback, because I think when we were part of ISSA, as much as we had the academic angle, we didn't have the psychosocial one. And for me, that's the one thing that stands out. I work a lot with learnerships, and we can't retain the numbers for 12 months. And you guys can go a long way for 16 months and get to place them, and they're still enthusiastic and they want to do it because of the balance. And I guess if we go that route, it will actually close the loop of unemployment and make sure that also people are placed in their line of work, what they're passionate about, and then they can actually grow in that angle. Thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate it. And now I'm going to open up for questions. Kindly raise your hand. Unless if you open your video and raise your hand if you don't know where the icon is sitting. But please raise your hand, ask questions, make comments. I've learned a lot. You don't want to see my notebook. And certainly we'll be reaching out to make sure that we are also in line with, the growth that we envisage, because I think I've been wanting that contribution of the psychosocial angle into most learnerships, because we can't retain it. I think, like Johannes was saying, when you have a mentor, you don't follow the crowd, because sometimes we follow the crowd. We just do what the next person is doing, where the opportunities are at. And when they say we want Black people, you actually don't even look at your path, because you don't have a job. You just go to the next learnership. And then at the end of your 5 years, you've done 7 things that are actually not even interrelated. But because you were running away from poverty, but you didn't know what you were running towards, it actually gets to distract you. So yeah, I'm appreciative of that. We've got, so far, there's 25 of us in the room. There is 4 of you, so that leaves 21 potential mentors. Dumisani, your hand is up. Who are willing to join you and make a contribution?
Wow. I'm super excited to be on this call. I'm bursting I'm bursting out of my seams. Seriously, besides the fact that it has soothed, the whole thing about the cricket, I feel I'm in the right room right now. So thank you so much, Nyari. Thank you, Kili, and thank you to the rest of your team, Jay, Tuto. You guys have opened our eyes in a whole lot of ways. Look, just a little bit about the genesis of this of this meeting together here. We heard about We Think Code from BCX. Last year we went on a road show where we introduced ourselves to various entities. And at BCX, among the 2 names of entities that they work with regarding, our area of skills, they definitely mentioned We Think Code. So what they wanted the most, they said, listen, We Think Code are already doing an excellent job in the technical training of these young people, and we just want people who are like you, people who have been out there, who've got work experience, who can then connect and mentor these young people. So, assuming that everything requires an education, we went out there and tried to find out what's the meaning of mentoring, And we had Lirato, who does a lot of coaching. And so we went around asking, how is this going to work? But it's been very assuring to meet with you, Nyari, and your team, particularly to hear that our life story actually makes us more than qualified to mentor the young people who are at We Think Code. That's very assuring. And I would like to echo your challenge to the people who are on this call and to say, as we engage with the people from We Think Code, perhaps let's put it out there. Let's say, what are the things that we have thought would hinder us from actually doing this effectively? Because from this call, each one who's here will go out there and actually be an ambassador to the message that we've heard here. But more than anything, if we are able to ask all the questions that we have in mind, I think when we then go on to mentor people, we would be knowing fully well, deep in our conscience, because there's nothing worse than what's called an imposter syndrome, where you feel, am I at the right place? Am I doing the right thing? So I think if we would ask our questions, we would get rid of that. And from that moment, we would fly higher, not just in mentoring people, but in a whole lot of other areas of our lives. So everybody, please, let's take this moment. Let's ask our questions. Thank you.
Go ahead, Nyari.
I think one of the things that I would really love to point out to everyone is this thing that it's so important to start. And I don't have an educator's background, right? I'm trained first as an accountant and then self-taught as a techie. And over the years, I've been a coach. I've tutored accountants. But I'm not a trained teacher. So one of the things that was most intimidating about joining We Think Code, and especially about changing the curriculum, was the sense that I'm not qualified, if I can say. But I knew I was qualified to know that what the students were learning wasn't the optimal. And what was happening was the strongest people were making it through. And the people that we were targeting, who we were trying to give a leg up, were having a harder time of it. And I think one of the things that comforts me is to have an agenda to not do harm. So if you think about it in the sense that if I'm sitting with, and I'm going to use Jay because I work with Jay and I still have some really good, heartfelt conversations. The thing I commit to try to do is not to harm him. So that means that if I'm in a meeting with him and I don't know the answer, I don't, and pretend to be. So the worst that will happen is Jay will have a conversation with someone who cares about his well-being, but doesn't have the answer. That's the worst that I can do, right? That's the worst. And so I hope in that situation, he walks away feeling like someone who cares invested time. She didn't solve my problem, but I'm not as alone in the problem as I was before I spoke to her. And I think this is something that I encourage mentors to consider. And even now we encourage our alumni to come back and mentor because they now have some experience, which is my sister always says to me when I'm stressed about, operating as an entrepreneur, don't meditate on disaster. Don't use all your brain capacity to cook up the wildest, craziest thing that can happen. If you find yourself in a circle with your mentees and you're ill-equipped, just say, guys, I don't know the answer. And you haven't harmed them, but you've shown up for them, which is more than a lot of us get to have. And so when you think about it that way, it really lowers the barrier to entry to be just, how many of us have just had a day when the first person who just looked at you straight in the eye and smiled made you feel better? And so as Jay and Tuto will tell you, the We Think Code program is hectic. And what I tell the students is, we're trying to help you to beat odds. When you walk into a room and you went to this, hipster free academy, people are thinking, are you good enough? Are you as good as the white kid from Stellenbosch? That's what they won't say it, but that's what they're thinking, right? And so you're going to have those kinds of days. What we're trying to do is, in the safest place we know we can create for you, push you to your limit. So that by the time you're in that other arena, you're like, actually, I've seen this thing before. And then what we are asking of mentors more than anything is put an arm around a person. And so if you can give them the technical answer, the corporate strategy, fantastic. If you can't, they weren't alone for that hour. And that gives them the relief. And so that's the way I think, as long as your ego is in check and you're not going to pretend to know things you don't know, then just showing up is huge. And every one of us has probably experienced it some way. And that's the paying it forward. And I'll end with this. I was at an early dinner with the executive director of economic development for the city of Joburg. And she said, Nyari, when you go on that call, don't ask those people for anything. Tell them, now that we've agreed to partner, our next steps.
Wow.
So now that we've agreed to partner, our next steps are going to be a tutorial with Kile on the first session. But over to you, Jay. I saw your hand was up.
Right. I'm sorry, but then I just wanted to ask to potentially everyone who's on the call, potential employers, or sorry, potential mentors. What mistakes have you made when you entered the industry that you're in? What lessons have you learned when you entered the industry that you're in? And if there's anything that you do differently in the sector that you're in when you started, um, what is it that you do differently in your career if you had a chance to start over? And I think if you have a question to any, an answer to any of those questions that I'm posing right now, then why not impart that onto the next or upcoming student? because we know you can't turn back the hands of time. So what is it that you would do differently, and why not impart that onto someone else? Teach them those lessons that you have learned. That's the question that I have.
Thank you very much, Johannes. Thought-provoking, and thank you for getting us to engage, because at least you were able to pose the question back to us when we don't have a lot to ask you at the moment. But Colin, your hand is up. Would you like to respond to that or also make a contribution? Good evening. You're still muted. Just the mute button. May you kindly unmute yourself? Voila.
No, I'm exposing myself that I've lost my touch, or I'm losing my touch in this space. But I think I'm in the right group, and I'll recover. I'll recover. And, Nyari and colleagues, sometimes when you present and people don't react or don't ask questions, I mean, it says a lot about the quality of your presentation, that you actually gave answers in your presentation that we are stuck. We don't even know what to ask you, because you have answered questions while presenting. And for most of us in this group, I think alumni of ISSA and other institutions, and the experience in IT and software development space, by default, you are right. You should ask, when are we starting preparing for onboarding you, mentoring and stuff like that? Because everyone here is a mentor, and maybe we just not aware, or we don't have that confidence in us. But the years that we spent in development and the space, we can share a lot with your students and the new entrants in the market. I think I was very excited when we present, because you are answering a call of unemployment. You are answering a call of this unemployed youth, very clever, very intelligent. And if they are not occupied, they end up using their intelligence to survive and end up behind bars, and with within code available, I think getting them in the system, without that bachelor, without that diploma, you can get them into the payroll, into the system, and they make a living for themselves. I think that's something big that I pick up from what you're doing. And my one question was, when are we covering all the provinces? You hear what I'm saying? When are we covering all the provinces? Because there's still a lot that can be done, and what you started is something very big. Thank you. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you very much, Colin. You're very kind. I'll answer Chilidzi, and then I'll answer Colin as well. So Chilidzi is asking, is the curriculum delivered online or in a classroom? So it's actually on a digital platform, a digital learning management system, but we deliver it in a contact environment in a classroom. And we mostly do that because 60% of the students in our classes are coming from extreme low income households. So the household earnings are 75,000 rands per annum or less. And so what we learned during COVID is these individuals, even if we can get them computers and data, they don't always have conducive environments to study or a community of people to learn with. And so that's why we use the campus and the peer-to-peer learning, but the training itself is digital. So theoretically, if South Africa woke up with better equity tomorrow, we could just go online and remote. But for practical support reasons, we deliver it in a contact environment. And to Colin, we are really passionate about the idea of national expansion. And this is why we are trialing partnership with the TVET colleges. So what we're essentially doing with the TVET colleges, annually they're recruiting 5,000 young people into ICT across the board, from software development, networking, different vocations of ICT. And the DHET data shows 4.8% graduate with the qualification. And then when we surveyed partners that hire from We Think Code, none of them recruit tech talent from a TVET college. So if they end up with someone who went to a TVET college, it's because they got some other qualification that they were attracted to, but they don't recruit from there. And so with 50 colleges nationally, 343 campuses, partnering with TVETs allows We Think Code to bring a curriculum and a pedagogy of teaching that's proven to work into an environment that has infrastructure, but doesn't have a working model for digital skilling. And so what we're trying to do there is figure out how we can move forward. So essentially, what we're doing right now is we're funded privately. So we're funded by the Dell Foundation, Standard Bank Tutua Foundation, IDC, ABSA, Gauteng City Region Academy. And essentially, these are the organizations that have given us funding to deliver our training in a TVET college to prove the concept. And the goal is that once that concept is proven, maybe we can work with DHET, whether it's through the Skills Fund or through the CETAs or whatever mechanism to now deliver this training nationally. While we've only got students on the 2 campuses in Gauteng, we've signed MOUs, or in the process, we've signed MOUs with, I think, Kangala in Mpumalanga. We've also signed an MOU with South Cape. So that's actually in rural Western Cape in Otoran, like farming Western Cape, not shiny Cape Town. And we're about to sign one with Boland College, which is in Stellenbosch, but again, servicing the farming community, not the fine wine side. And we're speaking to some people in KZN, and we're about to kick off some conversations in Mpumalanga. So we're working with TVETs as our national expansion strategy, because when we've opened our campuses, Cape Town and Durban, it's very expensive. We have to find a space, renovate the space, purchase computers, kit it out, pay rent, etc. What the TVET colleges is that all that infrastructure is there. Worst case scenario, we may have to bring in computers because our students are on the computers all the time, where most TVETs have like a shared time on computer model. And then in some cases, we've had to upgrade the Wi-Fi, but all the other infrastructure is already there. And so that's the expansion strategy. So we're hoping in the next 3 to 5 years that you'll be seeing We Think Code in every province. And we're not going to every province to do what we've done so far. Currently, we're in urban centers. So we're in CBD in Joburg, we're in Woodstock in Cape Town, and we're near the harbor in Durban. What we're trying to do with TVETs is actually move peri-urban rural township. That's the goal. And so, yeah, it's a big effort. I actually am not involved in We Think Code operations anymore. I'm mostly in these diplomatic forums, which is where Dumisani has met me, trying to convince ministers and DGs and people that this is something we need to look into. And we're not saying our model is perfect, but we're saying it's got strong potential. And if they can come up alongside us, we can work together to make this thing a national scale.
Thank you very much, Nyari. I don't know whether you would like to take the YouTube question that Dumisani has posted. Is the mentorship supposed to take place in person or online?
It's online. Only if the mentor has the capacity or wants to, they can do it in person. This has actually been fantastic because it means we've got a lot of international mentors. And it means if we've got a lot of mentors in Gauteng, we can support students wherever they are. So the mentorship is online and the students have access to that because We Think Code provides computers and Wi-Fi, etc. So they can do online remote calls.
Fantastic. Thank you. Tando, you next.
Thanks, Lerato. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I think I'm inspired by what I've heard here tonight. But my questions were asked in Durban at Gautech, so I committed there. If you remember. So yeah, I'm still committing tonight as well. But I'm very keen to join in part. And yes, the guy at COJ was right. What's our next step from now on? Yeah. Another thing that I picked up tonight was that the slide where you presented about the amount we shipping out of the country. I have first-hand experience on that. We're currently having 2 projects that are obviously outsourced, and their capex is over R1 billion. And the companies that they are sourced to, they've hired people from around the world. just last week I was asking one guy that I had huge disagreement with where is he currently at? It was so noisy in the background, and someone tells me the guy's in Bangladesh. So yeah, I'm familiar with that, and it's not like they're doing something that extraordinary that locals can't do, but it's because of the gaps that you have highlighted here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to contribute to this community. That's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Tando, and thank you for your friendly comment at GovTech as well, because usually I'm in these forums and I'm essentially telling people in government things like we're asleep at the wheel, and so I'm not always looked on in friendly ways. So thank you very much for your support then and again now.
Thank you, Tando. Thank you, Nyari. Well, I don't know if there are any other questions. Besides my question, which would say, how many people do you want now, or can you have now? When will they start? Because you said something about second semester or first semester of second years. When will they start? You already said the training would be with Kele, probably through a funky app. But yeah, maybe those few questions before we get to the end of the program. And after your response, we will have Nonchu. Thanks, Nyari.
I'm going to give the mic to Kile on this one, because this is when CEOs start causing chaos by giving wrong information. So Kile, over to you.
No problem. So we do have 2 intakes for the mentorship program every year. The first one being in June for our private campuses. And then for our EWC students, they are about to start second year. So they'll be starting with their mentorship program in January. So I'll need a couple of mentors for that. And then with the training as well, I'll do that most likely early in January with everyone who does sign up in December time.
Okay, so meaning that we can send you a list of everyone who's interested, and then you will be able to contact us to say who volunteers to start in January. Perhaps.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Fantastic. Nonsu?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. I just wanted to make a comment and question. The comment is, thank you so much, you guys, on this initiative. I wanted to comment and laugh at how the story of an African child is so similar wherever you are. I mean, when Nyari was telling her story, it's really similar to a whole lot of us. You have a mother who defines the odds and make sure that you really get the opportunities that she never did. It's similar to my story and maybe a lot of us. So really thank you for sharing, and thank you for really defining the odds and being in there until you are in this level with this organization. The question I have is, I'm a project manager. Even though I manage developers, integrators, blah, 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 I'm not a developer myself. Do you, is there space for us in the mentorship program?
Yes. Yes. So absolutely. And a lot of the experience that you have actually managing people is very relevant to the students. And then there's also a particular area of volunteering, which is around preparing for interviews. When our students are going towards interview time for employment placement, they get so anxious. And so one of the things we do is we get mentors and other volunteers to do mock interviews with them online, but actually take them through an interview. And for many of them, it's their first interview experience. And so we definitely need project managers. And you'll find, like Jay and Tuto were saying, a lot of the questions and the things that they are worrying about are not even the technical solving a tech problem questions, but are more career guidance questions. And that's really cool. And then if you're within the mentorship circle, to the extent that your mentees need some technical specifics, then we can always pull in a technical someone to support for that if you feel like it's out of your depth. But you'll find that like a large proportion of what you know would be quite relevant.
Sorry, Nyari, also to add on to that, I've actually had students asking if we could have mentors that are project managers. So definitely there is space for you to mentor some of our students.
Cool. Thank you. We're excited. Where do we sign?
Kila, do you actually have the link? Isn't there a link on the website? We should just share the link here.
Yes, there is. Let me share it with, I'll share it in the chats.
Before you change your mind.
Okay. Kele, while you're busy typing the URL for us to sign instantly, there's a question from Nale. Is it possible to challenge your students into developing innovative solutions that will help solve some societal challenges using big data, etc.?
Absolutely. We're actually in the running. We've applied to the Jobs Fund, and we're getting some money from the Jobs Fund so that we can actually pay internships for our students. So one of the things that constrains a lot of what we get to do is funding. And so because the funding is tight, the training is tuition free to our students. So they don't pay tuition and they get stipends of between 1,800 rands and 4,000 rands a month, depending on needs and so forth. And so essentially what ends up happening is we've got to stretch our dollar to as far as possible, and it focuses on that core training. And so now we are looking at how do we get support for our students to do other things. And so we've applied to the Jobs Fund for some money. We know that the government, especially within the CETA and NEMISA, there's some funds for internships there that we're now trying to figure out how we become eligible to access that. The application for Jobs Fund, we're in the second round. And then we've also started working with some entrepreneurial incubators. So we don't train entrepreneurship, and we realize that that's a whole field that requires a range of support that we don't have the expertise for. But in the same way that someone can train with We Think Code and go and work at a bank, we're now looking at entrepreneurship as an endpoint. And so in those instances, young people that have that entrepreneurial bug can go into further training to be supported to become entrepreneurs. But the other thing we're looking at is there are entrepreneurs that are looking for tech skills and can't afford to outbid FNB for talent. And so we're now looking at where some of our students don't necessarily have an entrepreneurial idea, but have an entrepreneurial kind of energy and are willing to be like an early joiner to an entrepreneurial venture, pairing them with non-technical entrepreneurs so that they're the tech part of lifting the business off the ground is something that we're supporting. So those are some of the things that we're doing to try and open it up. It's just that the employability angle worked really well because companies use their skills development levy to fund the training. The students are then able to access training for free and then have a 1-year work back obligation to the employer that sponsored them to, pay back in value what they got in education. And so I believe in all of those things. And because of how We Think Code recruits, people like Jay had worked and done a bunch of things before they came to We Think Code. So they actually have the maturity and experience to be entrepreneurs almost immediately. And so we're now trying to figure out how do we capacitate that and support that so that there are multiple opportunities for our graduates. Because yes, definitely some of them very early show aptitude for it.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for that response. Are there any further questions, Dumi? You're not summing up yet. I hope you're still asking a question. We still have 6 minutes before the time that you said we must cut off the call. So we are on time. Yes, you may ask your question.
Yes, not summing up yet. In fact, if I have your permission, Lerato, can I just share this slide, which just shows what how important mentoring is for our ecosystem here. So this is basically the direction that we are taking as this ecosystem. So at the bottom there, you can see we are values based. We truly believe that even this encounter that we are having here with you, Nyari, and your team, everybody who's in this team, is as a result of the prayers of our parents, not just my parents, but also your parents. your parents have desired something. It doesn't matter how you look at the terminology around prayer, whether you look at it from a legal point of view or just from a beating heart. Our parents have desired something. And that is the reason we are meeting here today. And no matter how much we're trying to escape this need to mentor someone or to lift someone up, we are unable to escape it. And for some reason, it weighs on each of us. When we're sitting, and using our time in ways that are really not productive, about 6 months down the line, something comes into our conscious as, so then what did you achieve with all of that which you were doing in order to escape having to embrace some young person and actually work with them? So we come from that, and we have a commitment to the future of our continent. So the next thing that we do as this ecosystem is we connect with institutions such as NEMISA that you've mentioned. And we then point young people to those opportunities that are on that LMS, which NEMISA has, which is a Microsoft educational programs LMS. So we point young people into that LMS, but what we have requested from NEMISA is that we would have an ability to track our the people that we have recruited, so that we would have regular conversations with them. That is the importance of mentorship to our ecosystem and our way of doing things. Because from there, we want to then introduce those young people who are being trained in those training programs, including your training program. We want to introduce them to what innovation actually means. But we want to also introduce them to role models, and role models being ourselves, but also role models being people out there who have stories which these young people can then aspire to. But where are we leading them to? We're leading these young people towards entrepreneurship, which is what you've mentioned, being able to start their own businesses. And of course, that then leads into such areas as growth financing and how to exit. Now, that is the crucial nexus that mentorship actually brings into what we do. Because to take a young person who has received training and to mentor them so that they can innovate, and to further mentor them so that they can start and run their own businesses, what that then does is that it helps that young person to come back and mentor somebody, just like you are actually demonstrating. But over and above that, it helps that young person, now that they have a business, to be able to finance some of the work that the ecosystem is doing. But my question would then be, if in the process of mentoring, one of your trainees, a mentor then finds that, look, in terms of this particular area, I know somebody who can show you these things much better. I assume we would have to consult with your office before we introduce such people to your students. Am I right?
Really, I'm a very kind of liberal person. I mean, you've met Jay and Tuto, who are two great ambassadors, and these are young men with agency, right? And so I'm very pro this idea of allowing things to mushroom. I think when it's formally within platform where we think code's name is used, and at some point Kile Nyari might be called to account by the CETA or the QCTO on what we were calling training or a workshop, then we need to check. But we're very pro the idea of these organic sproutings of within a mentorship circle, people come together. There's a lot of very student-driven things that we find out about, where we think coffee and they gather around a table and they teach each other things. I founded Women Think Code in 2019. 2 months ago, I was invited to a Women Think Code lunch. They picked me up with the car on campus, took me to this lunch. They were celebrating me. Turns out they have a committee. This committee has a roadmap and plans. It fundraises. I didn't know about this. So we think Code has such dynamic young people that I'm very big on getting out of the way and encouraging them with their agency to create things that go further. Because if we make everything have to line up for Nyari and Kile to sign off approval, I think we're going to slow each other down. And so, but the students themselves are very vigilant. And so when even among themselves, someone is acting chacharak, they self-govern and they'll tell you, those are not our values, not on our watch, not in the community we're building. So to the extent that there's that, I would be like, let it go organically. There's maybe a opportunistic side to me that, like, if there's good stuff happening, can you make it available to more than just the 6 in your circle? Can others also attend? Can you put it online? Can you record it? So it's more about sharing it. But as long as the We Think Code name isn't officially on there, because I've got to answer to a funder at some point to say on campus this happened. And so before that happens, within our process, we want to vet and make sure that it's legitimate. We encourage people to be very like apolitical. Like I always say to our students, the politics I'm about is the politics of opportunity and equity. It's not the politics of political parties, because then that starts to alienate. But if it's about the tech, if it's about learning, if it's about growth, if we can be a spark that gets other fires going, by all means, please don't wait for us to get to you and create a bureaucratic approval process. And so, yeah. And on that note, because I know time is running out, I just wanted to say to Jay and Tuto, oh my goodness, so proud and so grateful. It's the evening. I know you have other things. I know you have very busy jobs. I can speak for Jay. You have a demanding boss lady. But for you to give up your time and come to speak, knowing that what you're speaking about encourages people to mentor not you, but now people that come after you, my heart is so full and so grateful for your generosity and your paying it forward. And oh my goodness, can good things come to you for this? I'm just so thankful. It may seem small, but to me it's such a big deal that you didn't just take it and run, but you take it and you come back and try and make sure that the people that are coming after you can have better than what you had. So from my heart to yours, just the deepest gratitude, and the same deep gratitude to everybody on the call. 7 to 8:30 p.m. is family time for busy people. And so it means a lot to me that you're using it for this. So thank you to everyone as well.
Thank you very much. And on that note, I noticed that we're 3 minutes over time. If you kindly just give us just the last 2 minutes to sum up. First, I'd like to thank the team that joined us today. Look, you do think code, you do speak code, and it does show up in how you do things. And I'm very happy that our values are literally aligned. And I guess for the question that Dumisani was asking, I always say, if in my circle is people that share my value, I will not introduce and tolerate anyone who doesn't share my value. And like in the public space at the moment, I think there is one big project of the UIF where we can see a clash of values. And once that is the case, that's when you don't actually invite other people in your circle. And I'm very happy to be here. Just in closure, I would respond to the questions that Johannes asked us to say, what are these questions? What mistakes have you done? What would you do differently? If you had an opportunity to start over, would you? In response to that, from all ISSA alumni, I guess, what I wish I knew before I started work was actually not to go with the enthusiasm of thinking that everybody's excited for me to be there. Because sometimes that's the mistake that we make, because from our angle and our world where we come from, this is new, this is fresh, we can see the future. And sometimes you go into spaces where you have to tread carefully to change the mindset of the people that are there to do the things that you want. And the thing that I wish I would have done differently is I wish Robert Greene would have written his book, 48 Laws of Power, before I started working. So I only got to know about it at that particular time, only as I was leaving. but literally that book has helped me acclimatize myself in the environment of work, especially in a tech space as a Black person and as a woman. And also the last question was, if I had an opportunity to start over to do something differently, would I? Not speaking for many, but for myself, yes, I did. And I actually envied your courage of leaving the accounting space and coming into the tech space. I used to mentor ABASA graduates and those that are serving their articles. And it was interesting how I would leave the tech space and go mentor the accountants. And out of the 10 that I've mentored, 3 of them have actually left the space and actually found themselves in areas where their values are aligned and where they can actually serve better. And I guess in the space of doing that, I managed to move out of the tech space, but also work with techs from a psychosocial angle. So we are happy that we've just started this partnership, and I hope everybody has already filled in their details on the link that was shared. I know I did mine. And so with this, I would like to thank you and let you have a great evening further. Hopefully you're not sleeping early, because now you have a lot to digest and lots of things that you could put on the table when that opportunity and that email comes back. And I don't know, I think Tuto, you had your hand up if you wanted to have any input at all. I wouldn't
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry because I know we run out of time. No, you mentioned Robert Greene, and it's funny because I'm reading his book now, Mastery, right? And in Mastery, he talks about mentorship, and he talks about how mentorship can save you years. Literally, what would usually take you 10 years, you can achieve it in a year if you have the right mentor. And I think that's what the mentorship program really does. We think Code does that in a way too, because I feel like they've packed in a whole degree, a whole education, a whole degree into like 18 months. And then I think that the mentorship program kind of gives you information about that it would take you like a year or 2 years to learn while on the job, right? Like I see that now as I've started working, some of the things that I discussed with my mentor when I started working with the other trainees, some of them did not have that information. And it's not just tech related like we discussed, because we asked all general questions, all career-based questions, right? Someone mentioned project management. All of that is essential and important when you're starting out in your career. So I just wanted to say that, you mentioned Robert Greene, and I'm reading Mastery at the moment. So I just wanted to mention that what the mentorship really does is kind of like accelerate your growth, like cuts a decade literally into like 5 years. Because some people are senior developers with like 10 years experience, so they can tell you, okay, this is how to do it to save yourself time. So yeah, no, I just wanted to say that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Can you see, you will think it's a small world, but it is an energy world. So it does transfer, and we do connect because we connected. Thank you, Dumisani, for the scripture, and may it nourish us. And remember that I think from when ISSA was established, one of the things that one of the director generals that was leading at the time had mentioned was that they recruited Black children to come into the program because they managed to make something of themselves, even if it's a matric certificate, within a system that was meant to destroy them. And therefore, I'm happy to see systems that are mushrooming to actually correct what then was meant to destroy us. And now this time it will liberate us, make us better employers, and actually grow our economy. And with that, I would say thank you so much for coming out. Thank you so much for reaching out. And we're really looking forward to working with you. January 2024 is going to be the start of great things. And I'm grateful for that. I'll hand over to you, Dumisani, if you still have to say anything. From my side, thank you so much and have a good night.
Good night. Cheers. Have a good one.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good night.